Hi, I'm Kate O'Keefe, CEO of Heatseeker, a customer insights platform driven by AI, helping incredible brands with their customer understanding. I spent an amazing half an hour with Lex.
Hi. So good to be with you, Kate. I'm Lex Bradshaw-Zanger. I'm the Chief Marketing and Digital Officer for the L'Oreal Group in a region called SAPMENA, 40% of the world's population between New Zealand and Morocco. So yes, we have about 39 global brands within the L'Oreal Group, all in beauty and personal care.
And Lex, what did you enjoy most about your chat with me today?
Listen, we're already working with you in Heatseeker, so I know what you do, and it's super exciting to talk about how you are reinventing some of the core challenges of marketing, how you're bridging art and science, de-risking creativity, and bringing the consumer to life.
So excited to be kicking off this podcast series with you. You have had such an incredible career in marketing. We're going to spend some time unpacking the role of customer love in unlocking success for you personally, and of course, for the incredible brands that you've been a catalyst for over the years. But why don't we start, Lex, with how you and I met? Could you share with our listeners how it is that you stumbled across me and Heatseeker and how we got acquainted?
I don't think anybody can stumble across you. You're a power beyond belief. No. So in all seriousness, so as part of our regional efforts at L'Oreal in the SAPMENA region, we have an outreach program around open innovation to bring startups closer to our business. And so that's called the Big Bang Beauty Tech Innovation Program. It's quite a mouthful, but it's basically a competition that starts across all of our markets. So we operate New Zealand to Morocco, so 40% of the world's population, and filtering up ideas, innovators, startups. It's not just an organization that can have an impact on our business and how our brands come to life with consumers. And you came to our final grand finale event in Singapore end of last year and were one of the winners. We had probably filtering from about 5,000 different organizations across the region to the 10 that pitched to us.
Yeah, it was an incredible day, Lex. I felt like I knew the L'Oreal brand very well, icons in beauty and also in customer understanding. I did not appreciate until I was there in that room the passion that the brand has for technology and AI. And so it wasn't really until I stepped into that room that I thought, shit, we're going to win this.
And what was exciting was that you had startups across spaces that are maybe a bit more alien to both you and I.
Yeah. And it was just such a privilege to see the breadth of technology and innovation brought together in a single room. So we'll come back to that at the end, because I think that's where we'll end up, how your love of the customer and customer understanding has been so central to your career and obviously our relationship and what you and I are going to do together now. But let's start there. Lex, you've spent time in agency, in technology with Facebook, then when you went to McDonald, and now as the CMO of SAPMENA for L'Oreal. Take me through that journey and the chapters and how your love of customers has really driven your success personally.
I wish I could say that there was a strategy and a vision, but I think it was right time, right place. They talk about increasing your surface area for luck, sort of a bit of serendipity. So yeah, I spent almost 10 years in the agency world across Paris, New York, and Dubai, doing lots of exciting things in digital. So how do you bring technology to create interesting customer experiences? But funnily enough, my first ever job, probably 2,000 years ago, was in the US in an agency, taking brand strategy as a consulting product outside of marketing. So that kind of gave me this love of brands. So it's always about brands and consumers. Then I went to this company that's now called Meta, but I still want to call them Facebook. And I was lucky again because I was there at the time when they acquired Instagram, when they went through an IPO, when they really changed from a very kind of narrow focus to this broad reach organization. So super exciting time. And then from there to McDonald's. I love McDonald's, love the brands, love the products. Say that the ketchup got stuck on my lips and turned into lipstick. And now I've been with L'Oreal almost 10 years across Paris, London, and now Singapore, always in a similar type role. So we call it Chief Digital and Marketing Officer. It's a combination of digital and marketing transformation, technology, consumer centricity, e-commerce acceleration, all these different things. I've been very lucky. I worked across Africa, Middle East to start with, then the UK, and now this region based out of Singapore, which is large to say the least, 40% of the world's population and probably less than 10% of the beauty market. So massive opportunities for new consumers and to understand consumers in markets like India and Indonesia, where there's big acquisition potential, and then more mature markets like Australia.
Talk to me about your time at Facebook and performance marketing. What does it not tell us about who our customer is?
Sure. Facebook is super interesting as a platform because Facebook was probably the first platform, technology, consumer interaction point that brought a few things together. It brought together data and technology around consumers, and very unique centric because it was based on the profile. We talk a lot about the social graph at Facebook. Now other platforms talk about content graphs, and that's different. But it was very much the social graph and the identity graph. So everything was linked back to an individual. But there was this enormous scale which had never really been seen before, this combination of unique identities and scale. And so it gave birth to mass precision, which was a bit of a contradiction at that point. And while I was there, and this was probably the exciting piece, is they were figuring out what that meant. That meant moving from very lower funnel to being able to do broad reach, but with specific groups of people and identify them and targeting in ways that had never happened before. So there was this enormous kind of step forward from a media audience and targeting point of view. But I think probably the gap that Heatseeker was filling and is filling now is probably the return path. And so I think what Heatseeker brings is the ability to say, okay, now you have these specific groups of people. I can engage with them. I can connect with them. I can understand their data points, and I can create the feedback loop on ideas, on creativity, on concepts. There was almost two parts of the pie. Facebook unlocked the mass precision, the ability to target at an individual level, and you're unlocking the ability to say, okay, how do I use that data? How do I use those groups of people to make really data-driven scientific decisions around creativity and innovation?
Yeah, we find that data as an incredible source of hypotheses, Lex, but hypotheses that are not yet at a level of statistical significance that we can really count on. Who knows what was going on that day, what our competitors were doing, the mood that the algorithm was in. And it would be terrible if we were to decide that a great campaign was dead because it was having a bad day on the platform. So you're right. We like to listen deeply to what's going on across different platforms, Facebook, Reddit, TikTok, and use that as hypotheses that we can test live or through your synthetics.
No, but I was going to add to that. You fundamentally answered one of the biggest challenges in the agency world. The agency world is about creativity above all, and there's always a fight between the creatives and the people who want to test and who have to make decisions. And there is great creative ideas that never make it off the table or off the Adobe Photoshop because there's too much risk, because there's no knowledge of data. And so you're answering that as well. You're bringing this ability to de-risk amazing creativity, to de-risk innovation in a space that's been needing that for hundreds of years.
How do we make sure we're not sending the wrong message to the wrong customer at the wrong time? Like, how do we, especially now, I'm sure you've noticed the way so many marketing organizations are evolving at the moment. We're seeing a lot of marketers being pulled back from the node and a re-centralization of marketing teams, which of course pulls them further from their customers, which worries me, especially as we think about our need to continue to connect with people creatively, continue to capture hearts and minds. And so how do we really represent those customers in a way that makes sure that in a world where our marketers may not speak the language, let alone the jokes, let alone have shared a pop culture heritage with their customers, how do we bring that knowledge, that customer understanding back into the agentic enterprise?
And that's supremely true. I mean, in our business, we have 39 global brands now, hundreds of millions of consumers. It's very difficult to have a conversation with each one of them. And I remember at McDonald's, we often said, 70 million customers every day around the world, but very little ability to really harness and go to each one individually and understand what's going on.
To bring that to life for me just a little bit, Lex, and to just give you a little bit of context, I spoke to a couple of members of your team about our conversation today. I spoke to the CMO of Australia, New Zealand, Georgia Hack. She did want me to share the story of your trip into people's bathrooms where you were pottering through people's products. What was the most surprising thing that you learned?
When I travel to markets, we often do what we call consumer connects. And consumer connects are most exciting when they're in-home visits. Going into somebody's living room and they'll bring out their makeup bag. If you're very lucky, they'll take you into the bathroom. But when you see that, when they hold the products and they talk about the role it plays in their life, they talk about how they use it, they talk about why they made those choices. None of that can come alive in a PowerPoint presentation. It's impossible. You can take sometimes photos of people's bathrooms, bring it to life a little bit. No photos of people in their bathrooms or in their showers. Let's not go there. But this is really the challenge because you said it. We need to create more proximity to consumers. I think customer-centricity, consumer-centricity has been a term that's had a lot of lip service. But how do you really do it? How do you really make it come to life? And I think to a certain extent as well, you're doing that. You're using real data, synthetic data. We have avatars. We have virtual humans. We have all these different ways now which we can say, okay, how do I bring the consumer off the PowerPoint slide, out of their bathroom, out of their living room, right to somebody's desk? And that's what we need. We need to be able to test ideas, ask questions. It's almost this, it's research in real time and very micro, right where I need it. There's one that sticks out in my mind, actually. Her focus on beauty had evolved over time. She was much more luxury brands and fragrance and makeup when she was younger. And then as she'd had kids and aged a little bit, she was more about wellness. And this was, this is also driven by COVID. COVID drove a massive focus on wellness and skincare. So she talked about that. She talked about some of our brands and how she still had the fragrance, but didn't use it quite so much. And then she talked a lot about how she was looking after herself, but also how she was looking after her kids and acne and skincare and hygiene and all these pieces. And that's super exciting because we kind of instinctively know that in reality, but that is how people evolve over time. And it's not just about where you live in your age, but it's also about your life status, whether you're married, whether you have kids, whether you have a partner. And so it just brings to life these things that we know. And now we're capable of doing. We can find people who are single. We can find people who have kids. It's not just a 17 to 35-year-old who lives in Sydney. There's much more granularity in what we're able to do. And so we need deeper understanding as well.
And of course, especially given your heritage in larger organizations, Lex, in larger organizations, it's not enough to have the right answer. We have to have incredibly compelling quant data that shows to a level of statistical significance that overwhelmingly people are more worried about this problem or that problem. I find, especially in the enterprise, it's not enough to have the right answer. We've got to bring people along with us for the journey.
Let me tell you a McDonald's story about that. You talked about this qual and quant and art and science of marketing. So McDonald's, 70 million customers every day. And what's exciting is because they own the cash register, the POS, there is every single data point you can imagine. And so it was while I was there that there was this sort of discovery of Sundays and nuggets. And it was a combination of different discoveries. The BI data from the register showed that there was a massive correlation. That's kind of normal, people buying burgers and fries. And then there was these kind of weak signals online and social. And social was kind of early days that people putting the nuggets in the top of the sundae. And it was becoming an item. And so it became one of these sort of secret menu items. It sort of existed and people were doing it, but it was a bit niche. I think if we'd had a Heatseeker at that point to be able to say, okay, how do we take this concept and blow it up? How do we create ideas around it and test them around consumers? How do we not say, oh my God, this is disgusting and we're not going to do it, and for a group of people to jump on board? And I think there's probably a potential that was missed there to take something that was small and niche and make it enormous. And it's 2 products on the menu and it's an enormous business driver. So it's this combination you said of qual and quant and data and governance and ideas that are de-risked so that people feel comfortable taking them forward, that is both consumer-centric and drives big impact. You're bridging the art and science of marketing.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. And I wonder if we'd ask people, Lex, do you dip your nuggets in your sundaes? I'm sure there's plenty of people who did that wouldn't have told us that they
Probably.
did.
Yeah, I did do it, but I don't think I'd claim that it's a good idea.
We do find that correlation between what people say they'll do and what people do. It's worlds apart. We know for sure there's been great studies done that show that when people say in surveys, it's only 20 to 30% correlated to what they really do. And I think that's really shocking for us now that we have better tools. Now we've got, obviously we have a tool, Heatseeker. We have up to 95% correlation for real world behavior. And we know how correlated it is because we also run live experiments that will tell you exactly how correlated your synthetics are. But if we think about it as marketers, what we've put up with for so long, no one else in the business has had to put up with 70 to 80% drift on reality when it comes to the decisions that they make. Human beings don't mean to lie, but they often don't know themselves. You only have to watch couples therapy, Lex. We all know.
Avoid watching that, but shame is a big deal. Huh? It's why people don't buy condoms at supermarkets and why it's good to buy those things online. But it's true.
Yeah. And so getting to the heart of the real human longing and cutting through the shame, which probably, and L'Oreal, I think, does a beautiful job of catering to people in these private moments in the bathroom every morning, a moment of self-care before you take on the day, a really ritualistic moment where you remind yourself how much you care for yourself. It's a really privileged position that L'Oreal is in. Talk to me about your time at L'Oreal and how you're enjoying it as someone who loves customers and spending time with customers.
Wow. Okay. I think there's lots of things. I think, well, maybe first of all, L'Oreal's vision has always been about beauty for all. There is not a specific representation of beauty. It's different in every market, in every culture and ethnicity. That's evolving now with what we call beauty tech. And beauty tech is just bringing data, technology, AI into what we do to a vision of beauty for each, which means that, depending on exactly who you are and who you are today, there's a beauty answer for you. So I think that's a super interesting place to be, because that is technology at the service of the consumer with the right product. But I think on top of that, what's exciting about L'Oreal and what's exciting about beauty is right on the edge, on the cutting edge of marketing. It's a CPG, fast moving consumer good. It's a price point that people can access, but it is also a very, very emotional category. You're putting these things on your skin, in your hair, on your face. And so it is super emotional. And so the importance of brand plus performance, efficacy plus how it makes me feel. If I choose a fragrance, what does it say about me? Who's the celebrity who backs it up? So these things are really, really exciting, and they make marketing these products extremely exciting, because there's a notion of really being close to a consumer. And then there's a notion of building incredibly strong brands.
You can't get any closer to how you get to consumer. I mean, consumers literally take your products and put them on their face.
Glad to see you've been out shopping.
I have been out shopping, Lex. I was very excited to pick up. I've got the La Roche-Posay Cicaplast Baume B5. What can you tell me about this gorgeous cream that I'm playing with today?
This product and this brand is probably one of the biggest stories. So let's start with the brand first of all. La Roche-Posay is a super interesting brand. So it's a place, it's a thermal spa, and there is actually a pseudo hospital that exists on the site there, where historically, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, burn victims would go for these magic waters. And even today,
Wow.
burn victims are sent there by their doctor, and also those suffering from cancer treatment, because actually what happens is that the side effects of chemo are very similar to the impact of burns. And so it is actually a medical spa where people are sent. And this is where the brand was born. So it has a fundamental, deep purpose, deep anchorage. And La Roche-Posay supports cancer charities and cancer associations in every country around the world. So I think that's the fundamental piece. It's a beautiful brand because of that. On top of that, Cicaplast is super interesting, because Cicaplast is fundamentally a healing product. So for anybody who has had kids with scraped knees, chins, all these things, it's a very strong product and super powerful. But it's also an incomparable moisturizer, and I can see you doing it all over.
I am. I was only going to do a little bit for shits and giggles, but I'm getting carried away.
Some of our markets, the scale of this as just as a moisturizer for face and body is incredible, because it is so powerful and has such good results. So the brand is there and the efficacy is there, and there's a real reason behind it. So it's a super exciting product. One of my favorite brands in the group. And skincare is on fire these days, so it's a really exciting place to be.
That's a great story, like that connection to customers, like the origin story about the spa. And then here we are in 2026, hundreds of years later.
Yes.
And folks are still crazy about the product. That's amazing.
I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Yeah. I mean, it has something of a cult following. What do you think drives passion mark or a cult following, Lex? What is it about your connection to customers that helps us achieve that?
I think there are a lot of things, and I think it's changed over time because of the way marketing's changed, because of the way channels have evolved, and this notion of two-way communication. If you think back to beauty brands, fashion brands 20 plus years ago, it was very driven by traditional advertising and who the brand ambassador was. Brand ambassadors have always been super important in fashion and beauty. I look up to, I don't know who, and I want to follow them. Austin Butler for YSL, for example. I'm not sure I'm as cool as he is, but anyway. But what's changing now is the amount of other voices that have appeared, but also the storytelling that goes around brands. So this point about the medical spa for La Roche-Posay, there's more opportunities to tell that story now. You can create films about it that people can watch, because there's more than just the cinema to watch video. Or you can do a live stream from the place and you can really experience it. Or you can create virtual environments. So technology platforms have made brand storytelling even bigger. But then all the other voices, influencers, advocates, affiliates, just consumers talking about what they do. And this is the data that you're using as well. It's the feedback loop from consumers. That's what builds a brand today. I think it's Bezos who's, your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. So yes, the brand has a role to play, but there's an enormous piece of what everybody else is saying, other voices making brands relevant for their audiences, and the consumers are in that.
And in a world of AI, Lex, moving from that and that personal connection that you're framing up there, when we talk about influencers, we're really talking about the individual humans that we're connecting with. How do you think that fits into this moment of technology and AI? I've heard you talk about AI as an averaging machine. What you think the risk is to us as marketers at this moment?
Yeah. We're at an interesting point in the world. One, macroeconomics, not a great time in the world in terms of what's going on, but also technology is moving so fast and the impact of that. So organizations, marketers are under pressure from both ends. You gave me this idea, Kate. There's a K-shaped thing going on for marketers. You're right. At the bottom end, there is an averaging. There's a plain vanilla. Everybody's got the same tools. They are completely democratized. So everybody can lift their quality level. You can use AI to answer a question, decide on what you're going to eat for dinner, to produce an image. Much better, even if I've never been able to draw, but now I can produce images at a relatively good level, which I didn't before. So there's a massive, so you talked about it. It's the AI slop. It's the content slop. So there's a massive bottom of the K where everybody is at a very average level, which means that to stand out, you have to try even harder. And I think that's the top end of the K, and that's the human plus technology, human plus AI that's coming together. But that as well, that's difficult because I think lots of people thought for a certain time that AI would just make us all superhuman. Even if I know nothing about a space, a subject, AI will teach me, it'll output the right answer, and I don't need to know anything. And the reality is, AI is just a combination of data. It is just data points, clean data points structured, and probabilistic models and recombinations. So you have to have a little bit of a fundamental knowledge of your space to know what good looks like. It's got to be a tool to make you do your job better rather than a replacement for a craft you never had. Real experience plus technology makes a difference. So there's a lot there. That's what's going to happen. So it's not the death of the marketer or the death of capabilities. It is really how are you good at your craft and getting even better with tools and tech.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, especially for our space, customer insight. They've been so poorly served by the tools that are available because of the input of data that we've had. You're either counting on the customer data that you have, which is inherently historical.
Yes.
So that if you're doing a new launch or a new concept or a new campaign, you really can't count on that data to give you the customer insight you need to make the decision. Or you're running surveys, and we've discussed the poor correlation between that and how people really behave. Customer understanding and customer insight is a space that's been more fundamentally rebuilt by the technology and capabilities that are available now.
And customer insight is a skill. It's not just something that kind of pops up out of the data. That's why we talked about consumer connects and visiting people's homes. You have an instinct, you have a feeling about something somebody says, and then you need to validate it. You need to validate it with them, and you need to validate it at scale. I think I've always been right-brained and left-brained, or I could say I've just not been very brave. But I sometimes have a lot of instincts, but you need to take data to be able to prove them out, to de-risk them, as we were talking about before. Consumers don't come up and tell you, this is my specific pain point, and I need a product that does this, and this is the message you need to tell me. That has to be teased out. So there is still a real skill in discovering and building customer insights.
Yeah. And I think an acknowledgement about how people like to share their deepest, most secret desires with us. It's been wonderful working with your team, Lex, in the Australian market. We're helping them build out a synthetic audience, a synthetic panel, if you like, for male skincare. And we're doing that because we know that Aussie men hate telling us about their skincare needs and their insecurity.
It's not cool.
It's not cool.
But I have some La Roche-Posay moisturizer serum on this morning, but you can't see, so that's why it's so good.
Yes.
Maybe it's the touch-up filter on the camera as well.
Yeah, well, you're looking amazing, Lex. So let's move on to the mandate and your advice for this moment. Your heritage in both digital, through the Facebook background, and real brand building. If I'm a marketer and I'm listening to this on my commute and I'm a bit terrified about how fast things are changing, or even the compressed timelines now, marketers are shorter in role than ever before. So they have no time to muck anything up. They've got to get in, make a splash, and then move on to the next role. What do you want them to do on Monday?
Wow. Monday. So I think there's two things. Let's talk about technology and people. The first one is you need experts. Technology is not replacing expertise. And so the fundamentals of marketing are super important. Understanding your brand, understanding consumers, understanding the business proposition. So core fundamental skills are very important, and they're enhanced by technology and enhanced by technology like yours. I think that's the first one. And then I think the second one is this ability that we've talked about to de-risk, to bridge the art and the science of marketing, and to say, okay, now you can take an instinct into an idea and you can test and create data around that idea that will prove out the hypothesis. So it's really these two things. It's the ability to say, okay, I know that I have the right people and the right skills to build on that, and they've got the right tools to perform. And on the other hand is how do I use data and tech to de-risk super creative ideas because I've got to stand out, I've got to make a difference. Plain vanilla doesn't work anymore.
There's so many cultures that you're serving, so many languages that you're serving. Beauty means so many different things across that region. How do you think they're thinking about some of those topics at the moment?
It's true, particularly our teams that sit in the center, they're a little bit kind of shocked by the number of different cultures, the number of different expressions of beauty. But we believe that that is where technology makes a difference. It can help us be relevant in different places. So fundamentally, we focus a lot on building capabilities. And capabilities are one in the métier, in the function, but also in how we use tech. I think there's a lot of fear factor still in terms of adopting new technology. And so whether it's Gemini or Claude or our own L'Oreal GPT, there's a lot of push to usage. You've got to get over the fear factor of what AI is doing and really start to understand it. Because it's when you understand what scaled data and scale technology can do, then you can apply it to your specific use case and your specific problem. So I think this is really the challenge. It is evolving into a new era where technology plays a much more important role, but not forgetting the fundamentals of what we were doing yesterday.
Yeah. Build a bridge for me between that and the L'Oreal customer. What do you feel like we owe our customers right now?
So the world has changed a lot. Technology's changed a lot. As humans, we've not mutated that much. We've definitely not mutated at the same pace as technology. So our fundamental needs are still the same: to look good, to feel good, to be recognized, to have relationships. And I think this is where beauty plays a super important role, even if each one of us has our own vision. And so as brands, we need to still understand the humanity, the emotional connection, the need for beauty, the way it makes people feel, the empowerment. And so doing that has to appear in different ways in different places. And that's where we need to be much closer. It's not just this sort of spray and pray one message to all. What consumers are expecting has changed, but the fundamentals of emotion, the fundamentals of understanding brands are still the same. I remember another consumer in Australia who was talking about Garnier. And it was fabulous, more about brand positioning, because her point of view on Garnier was it was linked to the beach and washing the sand out of your hair after the beach. Probably when she was younger around, Garnier was very beach centric. There was lots of people running and hair flowing, and it was great. And it became a positioning of the brand. And she didn't even have the knowledge that Garnier wasn't even an Australian brand, that it was a French brand. So it was fabulous. It was just so nice to see how a brand has such a connection with someone's life, because that's what makes a difference. That's what creates the stickiness.
I love that. And I love that sort of deep localization that you're calling out there. It's a global brand that each of us has an individual relationship to.
Yes.
And where it's from isn't as relevant as the fact that it reminds me of the beach when I was a kid. Yeah. Amazing, Lex. Well, look, where I'd like to end is where we began and how you and I connected. We were on that stage sharing what I thought Heatseeker could do for L'Oreal, bringing together L'Oreal's love for customers, its love for technology, and the bigger vision of what you're doing in terms of mass personalization, connecting with your customers really deeply. I feel really lucky that we came together, and I'm really enjoying working with you and your team.
It's going very well. You're already in at least two, if not three, of our markets, talking to people in some of our countries outside the SAPMENA region. But you've really hit on a sweet spot for saying, how do we bring data-backed insights at scale right to somebody's desk? And how do we do that in a way that keeps the consumer alive? And I think this has been the challenge. And we talked about it through all these different examples, bridging the art of consumer insights, but the science of proof points, evidence, data at scale. So it's going very well, and I'm excited for what the future looks like as we continue to work together.
Yeah. And I mean, you took a pretty big personal decision, Lex, to come on board Heatseeker as an advisor. I know you're served by lots of brands, served by lots of technology. I'm sure you connect with lots of startups. Why did you make that decision? Is it because you love to share great ideas with other marketers? Is that where it came from?
I love seeing new things come to life. We talked about not being able to draw. I have an instinctive desire for creativity and impact, and I need technology to help me do that. I also found in you guys, you and your team, some exciting people that are passionate and who have maybe a similar bridge than me. You've got some big corporate background, but you've got this desire to bring technology and creativity and transform marketing. So yes, I work with a few different startups, and it's super exciting to work and to talk about what's going on, talk about product development, and also talk about how you bring it to market. Half the challenge of coming up with a new business is not just the product itself, but it's convincing other people that they understand it and want to buy it. So it's fun to work with you on that.
Well, amazing, Lex. That brings us to a close today. I want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I loved our conversation about Sundays and nuggets. I feel like going for a snack right now.
with your newly moisturized face, just a bit of sun care before you go out.
I want to thank you for the time you spent and also your personal support and sponsorship as we continue to roll out Heatseeker and share with L'Oreal its love of great technology and its love of its customers. So thank you.
Pleasure, super pleasure. Let's hope that we can get more marketers less scared of AI and technology and creating a super future for everybody. I have this sort of catchphrase that I always say, marketing hasn't changed, but marketers must.
Thank you.